up, friends? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name's Amanda. So in today's What's for Dinner video, I have some one-pot meals for you. These are perfect for busy weeknights. So I think you'll really want to stay tuned and see these delicious recipes. So guys, I'm really excited to share these recipes with you today. I've got 4 easy one-pot meal ideas for you. I think you're really going to enjoy them. I don't know about y'all, but I just love one-pot meals because they create less dishes in the, in the kitchen. It's when you're cooking a lot at home, there's always dishes to be done. So I'm always thankful for a break on that. These recipes were really simple. I think you're really going to like them. Give me a thumbs up if you're excited to get into these recipes. Also, if you're new to my channel, I do all kinds of what's for dinner recipe videos. It's all about the food here. So if that sounds like something you might like, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and join my YouTube family, and go ahead and hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I post a new video. I have some really delicious things in store for y'all. I think you're really gonna like them and you won't wanna miss them. But let's go ahead and get into this video. So first we're gonna start with our one-pan chicken and rice. And the first thing we're gonna get started with is going ahead and juicing some lemon. We're basically gonna be making a marinade for the chicken. The thing about the marinade is, the recipe actually says you could marinate it as little as 30 minutes or like overnight. I didn't have a lot of time to marinate this day, and so I really would recommend trying to do that if you can overnight. I just feel like that imparts a lot of more flavor into the chicken. Also, I realized I forgot the olive oil in the marinade, so don't forget that if you make this too. But we've got our lemon juice in there, and we're just adding some minced garlic and Dijon mustard, as well as some seasonings, which is oregano, thyme, salt, pepper, all that good stuff. And then we're going to just mix that up. Now this is going to just, be poured onto our chicken thighs. And I used boneless, skinless chicken thighs. The recipe called for bone-in, but that's what I had on hand and I needed to use up. So I thought that would be fine, and it did work just fine. And I only got to marinate this for about like an hour or something like that. But like I said, I would recommend marinating overnight. It's just going to give you a lot more flavor. And so I'm just cutting up some onions. That's going to actually go in our rice mixture. So what I really liked about this recipe is that it actually had stuff in the rice rather than just plain rice. It had spinach and onion and just things like that would make it, I feel like, more flavorful. And of course, adding in a little nutrition with the spinach, so that's always good. So we're just going to go ahead and cut up our spinach and get that kind of finely chopped, and we'll set that aside to when we start adding in our rice stuff. But first we're gonna go ahead and get started and sear our chicken. So we're gonna actually cook it on both sides. Now the recipe said 5 minutes on each side. I kind of went by that. At the same time, with these not being bone-in thighs, you could probably decrease that a little bit, but you do want to try to get a little bit of color on them. It's harder to get color, I feel like, on these without that skin on the outside than it is, like, for instance, the ones that have bone in and have the skin on the outside. But you're able to get some of that color on there, and that takes a few minutes. So they're gonna be partially cooked, probably not fully cooked, and we're just gonna set them aside, and then we're gonna start building our rice mixture. Now I just took a paper towel and got a little bit of that grease out. You can see my paper towel there. And we're just going to saute the onions in that mixture left from where we seared the chicken. You want to make sure as the onions kind of release a little bit of their juices that you kind of get those brown bits scraped off the bottom of the pan, because that's going to be more flavor. So you want to get all that in there. Once we've kind of softened our onions, we're going to go ahead and add in our spinach and wilt that down for just a minute. Now the recipe said to add in the remaining marinade from the chicken. I didn't really have a lot of that left, probably somewhat because I left out the olive oil. So what I did is I just put some of the ingredients from the marinade into this mixture too, so that it would have that flavor. However, I was short on lemon juice, so I really would like to have added a little more lemon juice to the rice mixture. But I went ahead and just added my rice in there. We're toasting that up, and then we're going to go ahead and add in our chicken broth. We're going to bring this to a simmer, and then we're going to put our chicken back on top, cover it with a lid, and we're going to bake it in the oven for about 35 minutes. That's what the recipe said, but again, that was for bone-in thighs, and it actually tells you to take the lid off and bake it a little longer. I checked the temperature at 35 minutes, and it was done. So I didn't bake it any longer on that. If you use bone-in thighs, just make sure you follow the instructions in the recipe. But these got done, more quickly, I think, than bone-in. So just keep an eye on them. You might even want to check them at about 30 minutes and see if your rice is done and your chicken's done and that kind of thing. But here it is all finished. We're going to go ahead and just plate it up. Y'all, this was really good. I do wish, though, that it had just a little more flavor. I think that adding more lemon juice to that rice mixture would have really helped. I wonder if even maybe adding some Parmesan cheese to the rice mixture might be really good too, just to kind of give a little more flavor to it too. But we really did like this though, and it definitely is something I would be repeating because it was just really easy. I really did love the textures in that rice with the onion and then the added spinach and all that good stuff. I think I'm just going to make a few changes next time. You just can't hardly beat the convenience of a one-pan meal though. I absolutely love that, and less dishes, so it's always fantastic. So next up we have one-pot spaghetti. Spaghetti is definitely one of our go-to meals. Let me know down in the comments like what your go-to meals are. So I was really interested to try a one-pot spaghetti because, I mean, obviously you always usually, dirty up at least 2 pans, possibly 3, with spaghetti. So it depends on if you're like cooking your ground beef in a separate pan or if you already have it cooked or, whatever. So we're going to go ahead and get started sauteing that diced onion up in some oil there and get that all nice and softened. And then we're going to go ahead and add in some green bell pepper, and I just use frozen, but you can use fresh if you have it on hand, or a different color if you'd prefer that too. That was just quick and easy for me since I had it. And we're going to go ahead and add some garlic in there and then get all that sauteed together. And this has some seasonings in it. It just called for Italian seasoning, onion powder, and garlic powder, and of course salt and pepper to taste. And I'll have all these recipes, by the way, linked below. I always make sure to link them. If I ever forget, just let me know in the comments and I will get that added for you. Once in a while I may forget, but once we've got that all good and sauteed up, we're going to go ahead and add in our hamburger meat. I've told y'all before, I cook my hamburger meat in bulk and then I freeze it. So I just thawed some in the microwave and then I put it in here. That works so very well for us. It is so handy to just pull that out of the freezer and use it in whatever. I just don't even season it usually when I make it. That way I can use it for anything that I want. So we removed the meat mixture and sat on a plate and put it to the side, and then we're just building our sauce mixture. I've got some beef broth and just a little bit of water because I ran out of beef broth. I didn't want to open it in a new container. And then we're going to add in our noodles. Those Rayo's noodles are the absolute best noodles. If you haven't tried them, I really recommend you do because they're so good. It just really has a different texture to it than other spaghetti noodles, and we just love it. But you're basically just going to kind of cook this for a little bit. Make sure you kind of move those noodles around so that they don't get stuck, like in clumps or anything like that. And then once they're softened, we're going to go ahead and finish building the rest of this sauce. Now, I actually doubled all these ingredients for the sauce because I used a pound of noodles instead of half a pound. So that was like a 28-ounce can of, I think, crushed tomatoes. I didn't have any diced tomatoes on hand. That's what it had called for. And then we're going to also add in some marinara sauce, spaghetti sauce, whatever you have on hand. And so I use that. It's a lower sodium one, so I always like using that. Ideally, I would have liked to mix that with one that our favorite is like the Ragu Simply Chunky Vegetable, I think, or something like that. But I didn't have it on hand, so I did use 2 of those. So I think this is very much a recipe that's going to vary in taste depending on what spaghetti sauces you use and all that stuff like that. So make sure to use your favorite and what you like, because obviously that's going to make an impact on the final kind of flavor of it. Now basically this is going to simmer and finish cooking those noodles. I will say that this was a little soupy for us. It might have helped if I had doubled the ground beef to 2 pounds. That probably would have helped a little bit, but we're not big on having a ton of ground beef in our spaghetti. So just watch out for that if you make it, especially if you double it, because I think that always can kind of throw things off just a little bit. And then we're also going to get started on some garlic bread. So we've just got the Take and Bake from the Essential Bread Baking Company that I get from Thrive Market. And we're just going to butter it up and get it, get a little bit of garlic put on it and, some Italian seasoning, that kind of stuff. Just a very simple way. Usually I like to kind of mix the garlic and the butter and the seasonings together. But I was just kind of quickly doing this night, and this worked well. But I love garlic bread. And we'll use all kinds of bread for that. Leftover hamburger buns, sub rolls, whatever we've got on hand that we have to, to toast up like that. And it's really yummy to just broil that and get it all good and, toasted up and warm. And it's just so yummy. So we're just going to pop that under the broiler. Just keep a close eye on it because, man, it is so easy to burn when it's on the broil setting. And then, go ahead and go back to your spaghetti. That's all ready to just add in your meat and onions mixture and everything in there. And we're going to mix that together. And once we get this all combined, you'll kind of see that it's a little bit, like I said, on the saucy side. Again, if you don't like it that way, I'd probably up those noodles just a little bit. You kind of have to find that balance to make sure you don't, run out of sauce for the noodles. But probably just a little bit more noodles would be good. Or you can just eat it like this that night and cook you some more noodles the next day and add them the next day to what you had left even. So whatever works best for you. But it's really handy to have a one-pot meal. We've got, our garlic bread done, and here it is finished. This was a great way to make spaghetti. You just dirty that one pan, and you can't hardly beat that. So if you're looking for an easy weeknight meal, this would definitely be it. And I think you could definitely play around with the flavors if you want to use sausage instead of ground beef, all kinds of stuff. So very versatile. So next up, we have the garlic butter ground chicken with cauliflower skillet. First of all, I just want to preface that this was our absolute favorite meal out of this video. It was so good, and I totally underestimated how good it would be. But first, we're getting started kind of sauteing up our cauliflower. I had some oil go in there, and I actually used frozen cauliflower, and I just defrosted it in the microwave. And that worked perfect. Sometimes I feel like you can get the frozen cauliflower a little cheaper than you get like the big heads. And plus, you don't have to worry about cutting it up or anything like that. You can just throw it in the microwave and, get it softened and then, be ready to toast it up. So now that that's got kind of browned a little bit, we're adding in our lemon juice. And then I also added some pepper and a little bit of garlic salt because I wasn't really going to add a lot of salt to this, but because I already had the soy sauce, but I thought I'd put a little bit of garlic salt on the cauliflower to make sure it's seasoned. And then once this gets all good and done, we're going to actually sit this to the side on a plate and get started building the chicken aspect of it. So we've got some butter and oil going in here that we're going to, combine together. And then we're going to add in our ground chicken. And by the way, any changes I make, I always put those down in the description box. Look for a little area that says notes under each recipe. And then that way you know exactly what I changed and things like that. And so that can be handy if you want to do the exact same thing. So I'm just using my handy little chopping tool to get the meat all, kind of broken up. And that was like super cheap. I think it was like at Walmart for like $3 or $4 or something like that. And it's really been so awesome to do ground meat with. So I highly recommend that. And now we like to get a little bit of crispness kind of started on the ground beef. So I did get this, or not ground beef, it's ground chicken. But I like to let it cook long enough to where you can see those little brown bits. And then I also added in some garlic here and sauteed that for just a minute. Then we're going to add in our onion powder and start adding in like our liquid ingredients. So it actually called for soy sauce and water, but I actually did a mixture of soy sauce and beef broth because I feel like, again, it's an opportunity to add more flavor. And I'm a big proponent of that, so I figure why not use beef broth instead of water. Now, although you could definitely use water, and I'm sure that would be fine too. We actually added just a little bit of honey as well. The recipe did not call for that, but we felt like with the ingredients listed that might be, something that would add some more flavor. And probably about maybe a teaspoon or something like that. And then we added some sriracha sauce, much less than what the recipe called for because I just can't handle the heat. My daughter would have probably handled it fine, but not me. And then we cooked the sesame seed oil with this recipe. The recipe actually mentioned about drizzling on top when it was done, and we wanted to cook it in there with it so it got intermingled with all the salsa ingredients. And once that all kind of cooked for just a minute, we're adding our cauliflower back in, and we're just going to toss this all together. And then get that, cauliflower all good and coated with that sauce and get everything mixed together. Y'all, I cannot even tell you how amazing this tastes. It was so good. My kids were so aggravated that I did not double the recipe, but I only had one thing of ground chicken, so I couldn't have doubled it technically. But it was so very good. I highly recommend you make this recipe. It was just so much flavor. We served it over some rice that we had left over. If you want to keep this a true one-pot meal, then you could just get you some of those frozen bags of rice and use those. But I'm serious, this was so good. I cannot wait to make it again. And we think it would be great with even other vegetables if you wanted to use, asparagus or broccoli or whatever, anything you wanted to use it with. But it was really, really good. I can't recommend it enough. So next up we have tamale pie. Now this recipe is actually from Cowboy Kent Rollins. I don't know if you've ever seen his YouTube channel, but I will link it below too. I really like a lot of his videos and a lot of his food. It looks so good. I actually had already pre-cooked the ground beef portion of it at an earlier date, and I found it in my freezer and I'd forgotten to use it up because I meant to make this recipe and didn't get to the day that I did that. And so I don't have footage of me showing that first part, but I will have the recipe link below so that you can do that. But to that ground beef mixture, I added in some crushed tomatoes, some green chilies, cornstarch, some chili powder, cumin, oregano, and then now we're adding some cheddar cheese. And this is just going to make up the base for our tamale pie. And you're fixing to see our sweet dog B&G pop in the little corner there. This was filmed before he passed away. I talked about that in my community tab post. So it was nice to see his sweet little face on a video. So once this is all combined, we're just going to set it to the side and get started on our topping. And that's just going to be some corn flour masa, baking powder, a little bit of salt, chicken broth, and some butter melted. So we're just going to get that combined really well, and then we'll be ready to use that as our topping. And this is kind of, going to be our tamale part, like that topping that's going to be a little bit like that. It is a very, very different taste from that because obviously tamales are steamed. And oh my word, if you've never had a tamale, they're so good. I had the privilege of a friend of mine who is from Mexico make some one time, and I got to help with them and actually kind of assemble them and that type of thing. And it was so much fun, first of all, but they were so delicious too. So those are just so good. Now, I had to end up adding a little additional liquid here, and I think that's probably going to be dependent a lot of times, on different things. But don't hesitate that if it seems like a little, firm to you, that, you could go ahead and add in a little additional liquid. And as long as you don't, I think it, even if you got a little too liquidy, it's probably still going to be cook up and be fine. But you just kind of want, it not to be so thick that you can't spread it or anything like that. Because you are going to top it on here and be spreading it out, which is not the easiest thing to do with that kind of liquidy mixture, but that's okay. It all worked fine. We got it, fairly smooth out there and pretty good and covered. And then we're just going to take this and bake it in the oven. So make sure you do use a skillet that you can put in the oven, like a cast iron, or this was a stainless steel for me. So I baked this at 375 for about 40 minutes, and then I topped it with shredded cheese, and then I baked it for about 10 more minutes. Now, the recipe did also call for hominy. I left that out. I am not a fan of hominy, but my daughter absolutely loves it. So I went ahead and just left it out of the regular mixture, and then we served it on the side for anybody who wanted it. So that was a good way to kind of please everybody. So I served this with some guacamole and some sour cream, but this was really delicious. My daughter especially loved it. Thank y'all so much for joining me today. If you've enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you'd give me a thumbs up. Make sure to leave me a comment below and let me know what your favorite kind of go-to meal is. I hope you have a blessed day wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next one.